I would like to talk about preferences. It's a subject that came up recently on this random blog, and like first of all, I think you can't put your own definitions to a word, um, and then make yourself believe that what you're saying actually makes sense, because it doesn't, because you're taking a definition away from a word that is listed in the dictionary. So, preferences. To prefer something is to have two things that you like, but liking one other than the other. So if you've got a black t-shirt and a white t-shirt, but you prefer to wear black t-shirts because you think it's slimming, that's not you saying I don't like white t-shirts, because if you was going, I don't know, to the beach, you might decide to put your white t-shirt on, you know. So that's what a preference is. It's like it's to say, if you didn't like white t-shirts, you wouldn't have any white t-shirts in your wardrobe or in your drawers. It's not a preference if you don't like something. If you prefer something, you have to like both of them at some degree. Whether one's more than the other, you still have to like both of them. That's what preferring something over the other is. If you don't like something, there's no preferring involved, because it's an absolute. It means that no, I don't like that, so I don't prefer something else to that. I just don't like that. And at the end of the day, it's about being real with yourself and just admitting that you don't like something, whatever the reason being. Because that's just what I'm like. I wouldn't say that I prefer something if I didn't over something that I didn't like. I'd say I don't like that. I wouldn't try and dress it up or sugarcoat it by saying, oh, it's just a preference, it's just a preference, because it isn't. If you presented me with that two things and one of them I didn't like and the other one I did like, I wouldn't say, oh, can I have the one I like because I prefer that. I'd say, just give me the one I like because I don't like the other one. It's like, okay, let's put it this way. If you were presented with two things you didn't like, then preferring could come into it, because then you can say, well, I don't like either of them, but I prefer that other one, to the other. And say you had two things that you did like, you could say, well, I like them both, but I prefer that one to the other one. But you can't do that if there's one thing you like and there's one thing you don't like. You can't just say it's a preference and then not be able to explain why it is that you don't like that other thing. I think often people try and escape from being candid and just saying exactly how they feel about what they dislike and what they like. So I know that obviously people don't want to hurt anyone's feelings, but I think if you're clever enough or articulate enough, you could explain it in a way that doesn't insult anybody. And I just think it's ridiculous when people try and make you feel that you're kind of in some way in the wrong because you've given them the definition of a word and they can't handle the fact that they're trying to give it a new definition. And you can't. It's just really frustrating. It really has boiled my blood a bit, because it's amazing how stupid, or how just downright bloody ignorant people can get when they can't explain their reasons, for not liking something. So they dress it up and say it's a preference and expect you to say, okay, no, it's just a preference. They're not being in any way derogatory, when the reality is, deep down inside, you probably are. You're just trying to paint yourself as this person to the world who loves everybody, and when really that's not the reality. Everybody doesn't like everything, and I can accept that. I can accept that people don't like everything, but I'm not going to accept when people try and patronise you into thinking that what they're saying is not in any way insulting. Not to me, but just to anybody, like in general. It doesn't even have to involve me or anything about me. It could be anybody else or anything else. So it was just the other day we were discussing preferring, well, that's what I mean. See, that's why it pisses me off, because it actually makes me get confused about what I'm saying, even though I know what the truth is. Because they were discussing about not finding other races attractive. Now, if you don't find another race attractive, it's not a preference. There's no preference involved, because if you did find other races attractive, you could say, I prefer that one to this one. I prefer Asian to, Indian. I prefer black to white. I prefer white to Indian. I prefer, but you like them both. That's the point. You have to like them both in order for it to be a preference. Whereas if you're saying, I don't find other races attractive, I only go for my own race, that's no preference, because you're not preferring anything. You're just sticking with your own race. That's what you're into. It's like, say you don't find other races attractive, which is totally fine. A lot of people don't, and you were presented with, like, okay, I'm black, so we'll use black for an example. If you're a black person who only goes with your own race, and you said you don't like other races, and you're presented with two black people, and you say, well, I'm into black people, but in fact I actually prefer this black woman to that black woman, or this black man to that black man, that's where the preference would come into it, because you like black people and you prefer this muscly black man to this really slim petite black man, and that's it. It's like, just be honest with yourself. And I think that's the moral of the story, because just admit to yourself that, okay, I said that it was racism, and I believe that it is mild racism, at the very least. I didn't say there was anything wrong with it being racist, I just said that it was racist. And it wasn't a black-white issue, because the guy who said it he didn't say he wasn't into black people, he just said other races, and there are more races than just black and white. And I think that when racism is often brought up in conversation, people often revert back to the black and white issue. It's almost like, black people have been told that they're superior as a race, but then when racism comes up, the only two races that are talked about are black and white races. It's just silly, really. But I was referring to, it could be any race, even a race that isn't my own. If he made a blog and said, oh, I don't find Indian people attractive, I still would have said it was racist. And somebody made a really a good point, that racism doesn't always have to involve beating somebody up because they're black, or calling someone a nigger or a paki or a chink, or a honky. It doesn't actually have to entail that. Racism has so many complex forms, and I'm sorry, but saying that you don't find other races attractive is one of them, because you're judging someone simply on race. And if you look in the dictionary, that's what racism is. It's, a lot of people who commented on that blog, brought up the fact that racism has so many negative connotations attached to it. And I think that's why people are often frightened or scared to admit when they're being a little bit racist. I'm not going to lie, I have been a bit racist before, but never to the point where, I'm not to the extreme where I've insulted anybody or beat somebody up because of their colour or whatever, or made jokes about their culture. But I think everybody has a duty to actually admit it and be like,